Welcome to Brooklane's Facebook Live event. Today we're focusing on creating work-life balance. I'm Kurt Miller. I'm the Director of Public Relations for Brooklane. Thank you for joining us. Our mental health or our brain health is very much a part of our lives and is a very important component of everything that we do that goes on in our lives. It's not uncommon to feel out of balance or torn between juggling various responsibilities, from your workload to relationships, family, and then finding time for your own interests. That's why we're focusing on the importance of work-life balance today. I also want to share that we have additional Facebook Live programs planned for the summer, and hope that you'll come back on August 20th for the importance of student mental health. You'll find more information about these programs on our website, which is brooklane.org. Our program today, as I said, is Creating Work-Life Balance. It is presented by Jason Manning-Beekman. Jason is a licensed clinical professional counselor. He has provided therapy at Brooklane's inpatient hospital now on a part-time basis. He has over 5 years of experience working with people of a variety of ages, but particularly with children and adolescents. Currently, he's working full-time at Chase Braxton Healthcare in Baltimore. He's also completing his course requirements for a doctorate degree in education from Liberty University in Lynchburg. Jason, I so appreciate your being here and sharing with us today. Thank you so much.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate the introduction, Kurt. And, I first just want to start out by saying, I think one of the things that most of the people I work with would say about me as a therapist is that I'm pretty real, and I will tell it like it is, but I'm not afraid to selectively share my own interactions with these topics and why they're so hard, because, this work-life balance thing is something that people would probably say, oh, we go to a therapist who is an expert in that and who knows all the things about it, so they can help us. But that doesn't always mean your therapist themselves perfectly executes these topics, because they really are hard topics. This one especially. On the surface, I think it seems easy. Maybe if you read a book and you know the steps, if you just go through the steps, there you go, balance is created. However, we are going to talk about today that this topic is a bit more nuanced than I think people understand. So we're going to talk about some of those elements, and then dive into how we can translate some of those principles into actionable steps to create balance in our life. I also, just want to start by talking about this is so important for so many reasons, balance. Generally, and kind of like in a broad sense, it helps with our physical health, it helps with our mental health, it helps us to have healthy relationships and connections with the people in our lives. It allows us to do the passions and hobbies and interests that we have. So those are kind of the general things that I think most of us could probably guess are the benefits of this discussion. But one thing I would really encourage you to do in relation to this is take those general concepts and really break them down more specifically for yourself, which allows you to create a really specific why behind your motivation for addressing this issue within your life. And that helps you to push through those tough times, because this process is not easy. It often has a lot of challenges and hard times that come up while you strive to add balance to your life. And so having a really strong foundational understanding of why you are doing this is so important. And I don't just mean like, oh, I'm doing this to have a better relationship. Well, what specifically is this going to do to give you that better relationship? It's going to allow me to be more emotionally available for the people that I'm in relationship with. It's going to allow me to be physically present in those relationships. It's going to allow me to do the small things that keep relationships going, like texting the person back, giving them a call. If you exchange letters, like having time to be able to write letters back to that person. So I really encourage you to like specifically look at how this directly is an issue for you and how this will directly benefit you, because that will allow you to just have a bit more of a firm foundation in your motivation pushing through this really complex topic. So once you like decide, I know I need this is why I'm doing it, then what do you do? Well, I wish again, like I could say, it's just you do A, B, and C, do it, you'll have balance, and there you go. If I knew that formula, I would write a book and I would be a millionaire, and it would be my gift to the world. And but that's not how it works. So before we get to the practical steps of like what to do, I want to first encourage everyone to think about a couple of different foundational issues, topics that we really need to address and really process what that means for us and how that's affecting either our ability to do a great job with balance or how it's affecting our ability to create balance in our life. So the first topic, values. Now, this is a hard topic, I think, for a lot of people because our values can seem often really existential and just kind of very cerebral. And well, yeah, I do value service to others, or yes, I do value investing in other people or being a big part of my community. But how does that conceptually present on a day-to-day basis? And I think actually in that like hard disconnect is where a lot of people have issue, because we do see our values as very disconnected from our daily actions, our daily interactions, what we say, what we have in our lives, what we read, what we think, all of those things, we can't disconnect them from the values that we have. And so it's important before we jump into removing or changing things in our life to create balance, that we really sit down and process what do I value? What is important to me? And even within that, what are the healthy parts of that and what are the unhealthy parts of that? And maybe I value independence. Okay, well, that in and of itself is great. But if that value of independence maybe is rooted in some unresolved trauma, well, then I might be hyper independent, where I don't need anyone in my life and I will never ask anyone for help. So I will do all these things, which creates so much imbalance in my life just so I can be independent. So I really encourage with that assessment of value that you look at the healthy things that inform kind of the different factors that present in your life that make up this discussion of balance, and what are some of the unhealthy elements of values that are being represented in this discussion, and start to parse those out and address them within kind of your broad context of the different factors in your life. So values is first, but the next is social norms. Our society and our culture really influences this discussion way more than we think. So, for example, we'll just take, we're in America, the land of the free. It's beautiful. I know a lot of things that a lot of people come here because of the American dream that we have. Well, the American dream in and of itself as a theory is beautiful and is awesome. However, in practice, the American dream often means if you work yourself almost to death, if you are always going, maybe you will succeed. Well, I'm not going to lie, I think that probably the practice of that principle often will incentivize us to be imbalanced in our approach to our life. So, that's one thing that sometimes is influencing us that we aren't even aware of. I mean, America has a beautiful capitalistic system, which means you work hard, you have good products. The more you get out there, the more you can succeed, which is great in theory. But again, elements of that can push us to work, 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 and never balance out our life so that we can stay competitive or we can stay ahead. So I think that's also something that is sometimes affecting us that we're not aware of. Our culture, if we were raised somewhere else, if it was a very individualistic culture, or if it was more of a collectivist culture, all of those things can really impact us in our view of what balance looks like. And then compound all of that with your gender identity, your religion, your socioeconomic status. All of those factors affect our view of balance, how we even think what that can look like for us. So, those are those are big concepts, and those aren't necessarily all concepts we have full control over, but we need to be aware of how they're impacting our own understanding of balance and what we can do to create balance in our lives. And kind of going along with that, another factor we have to reckon with are, who are the models around us? What have we been modeled as balance? And what are we letting influence our perception of balance? Often our first models are the people in our family. And I know that specifically working with children and families, having a child is a beautiful thing. Having a family is a beautiful thing, but it doesn't come with a manual. And so while kids bring so much joy into life, they also bring bills, and they bring finance costs and all this other and activities that they do and all those things. So our parents might not have always modeled to us as we were growing up the healthiest view of balance. And that can be for a lot of reasons, and not because they just weren't good at this, but we have to just be aware of what we've been modeled and what we've taken in as our view of balance as we grow up, and maybe sit down and redefine that and say, I get it, I get where that came from, but that's not going to be my view of balance. Also, because I work with kids, our social media interactions extremely impact our view of balance or imbalance. So if you follow people that are really about hustle culture, who think, again, kind of in the American dream vein, work, 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 and you'll get there, it will happen, which for some people, yes, but for most people, no. So again, that can impact us. Remembering social media is not often real life. We're getting presented this very skewed view of what can be accomplished and balanced. And that often doesn't take into account those people have assistants. Maybe those people are not being fully honest. Maybe those individuals have skewed perceptions of balance. So we really have to be careful about what we're taking in, that we're taking in healthy representations of balance, that we're viewing people that have similar circumstances to us. I know personally I can't hire my own assistant to do all the not fun stuff that I don't want to do throughout my week, but probably most of the people that I used to follow on Instagram could. So I probably should not base my ability to construct balance in my life on them. It just wouldn't be realistic, and I'd be setting myself up for failure. So be aware of those and start bringing in some healthy representations and models of balance within your life. The next thing I want to touch on is hard, because it's a complex reason of why we get to a certain place, but our own perception of our agency within our life is so important to how we feel like we can manage balance within our work and life and relationships. So agency, it just simply means my own perception of my ability to control my life or to affect change in my life. And, you know, some people do not have that just innate view that they have a lot of control of the life around them, for a number of different reasons. But we really do have to check that. Like, if I'm starting out with a view of I have no ability to change or affect the things in my life, well, then I'm probably not going to change or affect much in my life. So checking that and making sure that you're in a place of understanding that though there are factors outside of your control, there is a lot within your control. And so I think reckoning with that view of agency can be really helpful to doing the practical steps of creating balance within our lives. And so another one that I want to talk about, which can sometimes be hard to identify personally, but it's a need to understand that is imbalance in our life meeting a specific need for us? So is it our way of consciously or unconsciously coping? So maybe you're going through a lot of stressful issues in your life, whether it be the loss of a family member, it could be a relationship issue, it could be financial issues, whatever. If we're not ready sometimes to deal with those, one of our favorite things to do as humans is to deflect and to put it off. I can't deal with that now, so I'll get to it later. And one of the great ways that we do that is we create so much noise in our life so that we really can't see the thing that we need to deal with or the thing that's stressing us. Or at least when it does pop up in our head, we easily have 5 million other things we have to do so that we can just shift our focus and energy towards that. And so I think that we really have to be real with ourselves and sit down and say, hey, is this imbalance that seems like it was not a choice, is that actually a byproduct of you trying to just cope and make it through life? And if it is, I get it, we've done it, but it's something that needs to be addressed and something that needs to be reckoned with if you want to successfully address this issue of balance. So, I mean, those are kind of my bigger, like, conceptual, foundational elements that I think before you jump into doing the practical work of balancing your life, that you really need to reckon with. And I think that these are so important because I think our tendency is to just like jump right into working on things, when really I think there needs to be more intentionality when we're addressing issues of wellness, whether it be balance or our thought process or our behaviors. I think there needs to be a lot more prep work that's done. However, you know, we don't just grow up learning a lot of this. So our tendency is to say, I see an issue that needs to be changed, so I'm just going to jump on it and do it. And that oftentimes sets us up for failure. So I think by intentionally addressing these different foundational elements, like our values and the societal and cultural norms that impact us, our models that come into our lives and shape how we view balance, our own personal sense of what we can do to affect change and balance in our life, and our understanding of when sometimes we are sabotaging ourselves by trying to cope. I think looking at those and starting to address those will help when you do make those practical changes to help them actually be effective and stick. I'm just going to take a drink really quick. And again, those are big topics, right? Like, those are not usually topics that maybe you can just sit down and journal all by yourself and figure out. So that's one of the big reasons that I'm a proponent of therapy, and I know Brooklyn is because the perspective and the collaboration that we can get with sitting with someone else who doesn't have any skin in our game, who's not in our daily life, to kind of just process and feedback with. That's why that's so important. It helps us develop a broader view of these issues. It allows us to see the things that we just are not aware of because we've never had to deal with them. And then it gives us some accountability in starting to deal with and address them. All right, so we're moving from foundational to a bit more practical. So now you've addressed all of those issues, probably haven't gone through all of those in a deep manner, but you've at least addressed them and identified how they're impacting your ability to create balance. Now, what do you practically start doing to create balance in your life? So my first step is you have to know what you're up against. You have to know what is on your plate. And so I really encourage, as a first step before jumping into either cutting things out of your life or adding things into your life, you need to sit down and say, what is already in my life? That can be done just by simply making a list. You can look back at your Google Calendar if you're really detailed about putting in what you have to do. You can write it out, type it out, and make a beautiful vision board representation of it. However you want to do it, you need to sit down and kind of see what you're up against. Something to help with doing that, if you tend to be one who is not like super strict with putting in every appointment you have in your calendar, or if you have a lot of stuff going on and it's just hard to keep it all together in your mind, I would really encourage kind of keeping an activity log I think it'd be great if you could do it for like 5 days to maybe a week. However, if you can only do it for a couple of days, that's fine. But writing down in that activity log everything that you're doing throughout the day. And the more specific you can get, the better. What are you doing at work? Not just generally, what is my job, but what does that look in practical responsibility and action every day? In my family life, what are the commitments I have? In my relationships, what are the commitments I have? I think doing that yourself first is an important first step, but I definitely think that it should not stop with just you doing a personal assessment of all the stuff on your plate, because our assessment is going to be inherently a little bit biased. So we need to collaborate with people around us. So whether it's your best friend, could be your partner, it even could be a coworker, you need to sit down and chat with them about, hey, you know what I do most of my days, like we talk almost every day, or we live together, so you know. I've made a list, like, do you think I'm missing anything? Because oftentimes things that we think don't count on that list actually do count. Other people view those as things that are we're able to affect, like either we're able to remove or include into our lives, but we just see them as like, no, this is just an inherent thing I can't control. And so I think getting the feedback from someone else who says, I know you didn't include that on your list, but when you every Tuesday and Thursday drop off food at your elderly parent's house, that's an extra activity on your schedule. Doesn't necessarily mean you need to get rid of it, but it just is another thing on your schedule. You're viewing it as just something that is just kind of an innate activity that everyone has to do, but that's not. That's a choice of an activity. Again, you don't have to remove it, but we just have to be aware that that is also part of it. So I think the collaboration can be really good. I also think the collaboration can be really good with our coworkers, especially someone that you're close with who does a similar job. They can share with you, like, I know I see you doing this, this, and this, and this, and this, and this, and this all day. And like, a lot of that's not actually in our job description. And, you know, all the rest of us who have a very similar job, we don't do that. And it doesn't necessarily mean, again, that you have to get rid of it. That could be one of the reasons why you're an excellent employee. But you do have to be aware that this is an extra thing that's in your schedule that could be causing you to end the day feeling emotionally drained and exhausted. So that's why I think it's important to kind of first start with putting the pieces together of what's on your plate, and then talking with someone to get feedback and input about what they notice is on your plate as well. So in doing that, I think the next step is starting to look at an assessment of what are these factors within my life that are obligations. I can't get rid of them. They're not things that I can remove from my schedule. I have to do it. What are things that are just kind of the fun hobby type things that you have commitments to? What are the relationship things? And kind of starting to put them into categories of like, this isn't, I have to do this. It can't be changed in the fact that I can't remove it, or I can't add it. It just is, it's a part of my schedule. Look at the things that are able to be removed because they're choices of what you've added in, and kind of the things in the middle that could go either way. And then once you have those, this is the time that we start taking some of that foundational work and putting it into play. So how are all of these things meeting the values that I have in my life? How are all of these things bringing me joy, giving me peace, giving me rest, giving me a break? And that will also allow you to better kind of filter out, again, is this a need? Is this something I have to have in my life? Is this something I don't have to have in my life? And it gives us a better idea of where we can make cuts and where we can maybe bring things in. And it also gives us an idea of where the deficits are in our balance, and where the positive areas are in our balance. I also think one thing I would suggest in making this assessment, I don't know if you all have heard of the Serenity Prayer. I really love the Serenity Prayer. So if you haven't heard it before, it's God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. It's often used in a lot of 12-step programs and stuff like that. However, and I hope this isn't like sacrilege and I'm like committing heresy by doing this, but I often encourage people to switch out your name for God. So I would say Jason, oh wait, now I messed it up. God grant, Jason, grant yourself the serenity to accept the things you cannot change, the courage to change the things you can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Because for a lot of this, it can be easy to say, it's just this thing that's happening, and all this stuff comes in and out of my life, and I have no control over it. And to an extent, that's true. There are things that we don't have control over, but there's a lot we have control over. And I think this also helps to build our own sense of agency by getting a realistic view of what we have the ability to control and do in our lives, and what we don't. It also helps us direct our energy. And so I would really encourage you to sit down and kind of apply that principle to everything that you have on your schedule. And again, it just kind of builds that sense of I have a power in here, and let me be intentional and effective in implementing that power towards things that will help me. All right, so that's my first practical step. Know your plate, and then start to look at all of the things on your plate. What can I get rid of? What can I not? What is bringing me joy? What is not bringing me joy? I also this is kind of a side note, but it's my own little tip towards everyone. As someone who has been working the whole pandemic, like most of Brook Lane and a lot of people have been working during this time, COVID-19 has been awful. It's just been awful. It's destroyed so many people's lives, physically, financially. There's just been so much negative that has come from it. But of course, I wouldn't be a therapist if I didn't try to get you to reframe and look at things in a different way. So I'm going to do that. One positive I'm gonna say that can be taken from COVID-19 is we have learned what is truly things that we need in our lives and what are not things that we need in our lives or that have been bringing us stress. Because a lot of those things have just been forcibly removed from our life because you couldn't go do them, things were closed, maybe your financial situation changed so much that you just could not have this stuff in your life. It's forced us to get creative with relationships, so it's allowed us to kind of see, well, where am I willing to put that creative energy towards keeping this relationship going? And if I'm not willing to do that, is this a relationship I need? So I think that if we choose to look at it, COVID-19 can help us get perspective and help us really kind of see what we need in our lives and what we don't. And my encouragement in that is don't, as things have started to lift and things are kind of going back to normal, still be careful, still socially distance, still do all of those things. But as life is getting back to a little bit of normal, don't just jump back into what you were doing. See this as the gift that it was. It cleared out a lot of things without you having to do it, which for some of us, that would have been the thing that held us back, because I just don't want to tell this person to get out of my life, or I don't want to have to not do that anymore or whatever. See this as the gift that it is and intentionally re-engage in your life. Intentionally re-engage in the things that you bring into your life and intentionally re-engage with the friends and loved ones that you have in your life. So that's my little side note about COVID-19. So the next thing, after we've seen what's on our plate, we have made some good identifications of, I need to give myself more in this area. I need to give myself less in this area. Now it's time to start doing little things. And I say little things because I know we all know this, but even in knowing this, we all still tend to do it. We tend to go from 0 to 100. I have no balance. I just cut out half the things that I am doing and I added all this other stuff. And so all of these huge changes, which aren't sustainable, often bring such a level of disruption to our life that it just feels unmanageable and we want to go back to what we had before. So I really encourage you to make a small change. So I'll give you an example. When I told my best friend, who's a therapist at Brook Lane, that I was going to be speaking with you all about this today, she kind of laughed, and not in the, oh, that's nice, in the ironic, really, you're talking about this? But because like I said, it's something we all struggle with. So I've had to have this discussion with myself a number of times. And when I did this whole process for myself, I identified I needed more time that was just downtime with no obligation to it. And no obligation like the things I have to do that aren't fun, but also no obligation of like the good stuff I like. I just need some downtime. And so for me, I said I wanted one extra night a week where I was done with work and all of my obligations by 7. And I was just home or wherever I wanted to be with no expectation. And that was where I was going to start. So I started with that, which was specific. I want one extra night a week. I want to be done by 7 and have the night to do what I want to do. And it's really important in these small changes to be super specific. I know we've all heard the acronym, and when things are really popular and have been heard a number of times, it's easy to be like, yeah, but SMART goals are really, really important. Specific, measurable, action-oriented. Oh gosh, I forgot. SMART goals, Google it, it's everywhere. But measurable, something that's actionable, time-oriented. So give those really specific measures to what you're trying to implement, and then set a time for yourself to reassess. So I'm going to make these changes that allows me to have 4 extra hours in the evening, starting at 7, to just do nothing. And then I'm going to reassess in 2 months and see if that has been helpful to me. Now, the reassessment point is super important because it allows us to say, was the day that I chose not a good day because it seems like I never got to have that extra night because things always tend to come up on this night? It allows me to reassess if that was actually what I really needed. Maybe I didn't need extra time of just being alone and sitting still. Maybe I needed time to engage in a new hobby. And so maybe now I'm going to use that time to do a hobby. But it just kind of allows you to check in and say, was this change effective for giving me a feeling of balance? And if it wasn't, what do I need to do to make another change? I also think it's important to start with these small things, because if you change like 50 things at once, we're not going to know which one of those 50 things actually helped. And so it then would be easy maybe, or it would be hard then to figure out, okay, well, can I make any changes with those 50 things? Did all 50 things help me? Was it one specific thing? So making one specific change allows you to know, was that effective? And if it wasn't, then I can change that specific thing. Too many at once kind of clouds that whole process and affects our ability to know where to kind of direct our energy. So make sure, don't do that. It's kind of like if you've ever seen one of those elimination diets for people who have food sensitivities. They tell you to remove everything one at a time and then reintroduce it one at a time so you can see what is actually affecting you. It's kind of that same principle. So starting small, reassessing. My third practical tip is value check-in. Are my values present in my schedule and in my life? That's so important to check in on. I used to say to people, what are your values? Well, I don't know. What do you mean, Jason? I don't know what like that could be anything. And I was like, okay, well, let's say I was a magician and I could look at your life and I looked at your week. By all the things you have on your schedule, would I be able to tell what you value? And some people would say, yeah. And I was like, okay, well then tell me what's your schedule? I was like, well, you really value time of being of service to other people. I don't see any service in there to other people. And so it just kind of allows you to really make sure there's congruence between our values and what we are actually doing. I also think check-ins in this area allows for us to kind of continue to assess kind of the realistic aspect of balance. There really are things that are limitations for us that we can't change, and we need to be aware of that. Like if I cannot change that I am the person that has to work till 6 o'clock 3 nights a week, that just is, what it is. Or I need to work a part-time job on top of my full-time job to pay all of my bills. Okay, can't get rid of some of those extra work hours. Okay, what can we do before and after? What are we choosing as the part-time job that helps us to feel okay? So maybe the part-time job isn't going to be emotionally heavy for someone like me who does a lot of emotional stuff all day. Okay, well, that's at least something I can change. So I still have to work that part-time job, but I'm going to be specific about what I choose to work that part-time job. So these check-ins allow us to just get really real about the constraints of our kind of life and schedule. And it also allows us to then be more targeted in kind of doing this whole process of gaining balance. All right, two more. My next one that I suggest is setting boundaries. Oh, such a perceivably simple concept, but such a hard concept. Setting boundaries is not fun. Most people don't like doing it because it causes us to have to say no. It causes us to have to not give someone that we're in close relationship with something that they're asking for or that they need. But setting boundaries is so important. Being firm about them, not wavering on them, taking time to really assess what those are before kind of just rushing into it. It allows us to do balance better. And for those of you who are not fans of setting boundaries and don't like what is perceived, I think, as conflict by having to set a boundary, again, let me be a therapist and reframe it for you. This process is often a good thing, and it's often a sign of respect and how much you care about someone when you put boundaries in place. For example, if I need to put a boundary in place with my closest friend, that feels hard because I love them and I want to give them whatever they ask for or need. But setting that boundary really is you saying, I love you and care about you so much that I don't want you to have to leave my life. So I'm going to put a boundary in place so that I don't get worn out. I don't feel like I'm taken advantage of. I don't feel like this, and this, which will allow me to keep you in my life way longer. And so I know just like by reframing that, it doesn't feel like it's that easy to just do, but it's important to look at it from that way, because that does help us confront some of these more conflict-based parts of setting boundaries that feel so hard for people. So looking at it that way can reframe and help us to just do that important process of setting boundaries. And my last little practical note is balance is something you do for the rest of your life. It is an ongoing process. It is something that needs to have flexibility to it. It is not black and white. It is not easy, and it's not something I feel that you ever get to a point where you just don't ever need to think about it. It's there, it happens, done. No, it's something we always need to think about when we're in a distressed crisis state, obviously, but when we're in a really good state, because oftentimes we get to that crisis state by starting from a really great place where I feel great. So I'm making lots of friendships and lots of people are coming into my life. I'm doing really well at work. So that's been recognized and I've been promoted and I have more responsibility. Great, that's another addition. I have lots of cool hobbies that I've found out I have, and I'm doing lots of cool classes to like do those hobbies. Okay, good. But this is all stuff we're taking on, and all that good stuff in slow little bits can push us to a really imbalanced crisis state. And so again, this information is for those of you who do balance really well, and this information is for those of you who don't do balance super well. This is an ongoing process that needs continuous reassessment and continuous intentional efforts and action to do well and to continue to give us that wellness kind of view of life, which is not that life is always good, but it's manageable in its peaks and valleys. So that's kind of my last little thing that I would throw out for you. But this is a hard topic. Find a therapist, find a best friend who you can start processing through some of this with. And if you don't have that, like I said, a therapist is a great person to process it with, but start doing this work, because it's a gift you can give yourself and your mental health and your wellness all together.
Jason, I want to just thank you so much for sharing with us and sharing a lot to give people some good practical information and starting points and encouragement. So it just, I think, has been very good for people, and I so appreciate your taking the time.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for having me, and thanks for letting me share.
All right. Well, we'll talk again soon. Take care.
Thank you.